Detours. Brought to you by Sports and Spokes, the magazine for wheelchair sports and recreation. Starting his tennis life at only 15 years old, Jon Rydberg has experienced wheelchair tennis as not only a four-time Paralympian, representing the United States in Athens, Beijing, London, and Rio, but also as a respected and decorated coach. Once ranked as high as 11th in the world, as a player, his experience in winning ways earned him the position of USTA national coach, and he was voted Paralympic Coach of the Year in 2019. Welcome, Jon. Let's jump right in. I think I'd be remiss to not state that you also made it to number one nationally.
Correct. Two separate rankings, one USTA, one ITF. And I was fortunate enough to be number one in the country.
Hey, Jon, you've had 30 years of experience, 3 decades of experience under your belt. You've seen a lot of players come and go. I'd have to think, just jumping right into being a coach. I mean, we'll go back and address some of your play, but you, as a player and a coach, that crossover had to be really strong for you using a chair and you being able to teach people in a chair.
It was a crossover that I was preparing myself for a long time, though. I started coaching in 2009, even though I didn't finish my playing career until 2016. So I knew that's what I was going to do, and that's why I originally started coaching locally with high school teams, stuff like that, some adult programming, kid programming, to get my feet wet, knowing that when I was done playing, I knew that coaching was something that I'd want to kind of be a part of and continue my tennis world and grow it even more so. So that's why I had done that. And it was an easier transition because of that. It's much harder if I just quit playing and then I go into coaching. There's a lot of process to that, obviously changing roles like that. So for me, I had it planned out. It happened to come to fruition the way I wanted it to come, because I didn't want to give up the sport because it's a great sport to be in.
Yeah, in some ways, I think you have to shut your ego down as a player in order to rise as a coach.
Correct. I feel like if I came back and played today, I'd probably be a way better player than I was when I was actually playing, because you look at the game differently when you're a coach. So as a player, you're worried about yourself only. As a coach, you're worried about many bodies. So that's a big change as well, where you're beginning early stages of coaching. You need to put yourself, in your place, like, hey, I'm just beginning this process. I might have been a very good player, but I don't know everything about how to coach every different personality that comes through this door. So that's an adjustment.
Jon, as I look at your career and seeing that you started your Paralympic career in 2004, I would say more or less you came into what we might consider the modern era of tennis. Covering the sport back in the 90s, there were so many still slightly adapted chairs, box frames that had been adapted, rollerblade wheels, but you came in to an era that was more solidified. Did you appreciate and understand the era that you came into?
Yes, completely. And the equipment changed immensely, kind of like what you mentioned, because I did start with the original, quickie GPV with putting washers in there to make, some camber happen, limited camber that we had from back in the day, and quickly transitioned to the three-wheeler wheelchairs. And then all of a sudden anti-chip bars come in and fixed frames come in that are much lighter. So when I kind of got to the higher levels of the pro division, all those things were kind of set. And that's pretty much equivalent of what's still happening today. There's obviously some modifications that people make, and they make things better from 20, 25 years ago. But the base foundation of what the chairs are today kind of started around that 2000 range. And that's a huge advantage of, I've never had to change per se a big amount like some previous players had to, where Brad and Randy and them, when they first started the sport, basically they were doing with whatever they had, and then the players, through their abilities, changed what the equipment was going to look like in the end. The players just got too good for the equipment, and things had to change at some point. So I came in seeing it all, so I was the best position possible. I've seen all the equipment from beginning to end, but in my heyday, I got to use basically what's still used today in the top of the line stuff.
Oh, undoubtedly. I look back to even that late '90s era when Dave Hall was, so dominant, and he had one of those, those three-wheel chairs with the little rollerblade wheel out in the front, but he had no anti-tips in the back. It's just fascinating to me to see how the chairs and the players have to work so much together. And keeping with that, I noticed that, one of the contemporary issues that's really been broached is the collaboration between the ITF and the chair builders and designers. Has there been a solid relationship between the two that's formed that's helped the chair improve with the player?
I think it's formed through the whole ecosystem, whether it's just the ITF and the chair companies. I don't think that's necessarily the exact route that it took. It's players saying, well, I can do this. I'm physically able to do this, and I need my chair to follow along with that. When you're talking about the wheelchair that we used in the 90s, it came out early 90s, 92-ish, 93-ish, and then kind of faded away by 2000. But those chairs were great. The idea was great. It was quick turning with the one wheel in front, not much friction, all those kind of things. But then once players got more able to use their trunk and their legs and things like that to play, they needed more stability. So that 45-degree angle going forward was kind of tipsy in a three-wheeler. So we needed the two wheels back in the front again. But due to the new technology where we could have a fixed frame or even a changeable frame where I can move the camber bar forward, put my feet farther underneath me, but still be stable, was a huge game breaker in that sense.
Yeah, undoubtedly. Also, the thing I hear most, we had talked to Jim Black not long ago, who was legendary in the '90s, and he talked about the whole ratcheting clamping system. And back in that day with David and all them back in the '90s, they're just using a ton of straps. Now they've got a clamp, just as you guys used in sled hockey to get your body secure with the unit.
I'm definitely old enough where I started with no strap, even though I should have, but that wasn't a thing then. And then it went to just the Velcro, kind of bring it up and over your knees or your lap or whatever. And now with the click straps to make it completely like if you're standing up and your shoes are not tied completely tight, that's what it feels like in the old straps. But now with the click straps and all the perfect modifications to your body type, that is a game breaker where that chair is one with you. So if you move an inch one way, the chair's going with you. So that's a
Oh
big
yeah, no doubt. And the chair technology with all the maneuverability and the maximum camber in the chairs, it's really shortened the whole court. People are really approaching the net more and more. The volleys are getting a little bit shorter, and it's just becoming a precision game.
correct. You have to be an all court player today to be at the very best. You have to use the whole court. You can't just stay back at the baseline like the 80s and early 90s. You have to be able to come forward. You definitely have to be able to hit the shorter shots, the drop shots. You have to use the whole depth of the court, both long and short. If you can't do that, you're pretty one dimensional, and somebody's going to exploit that immediately.
We'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsor, Sports and Spokes Magazine. For nearly 50 years, they've produced stories on iconic athletes performing at the top of their game, given generational coverage of sports dating back to the 1970s, and they've shown the way with exciting and timeless magazine cover shots. To stay on top of all the latest news from the world of high performance adaptive sports, go to sportsandspokes.com. Sports and Spokes, the magazine for wheelchair sports and recreation. Hey, John, I don't want to rub salt in a wound, but I'm going to go back to 2008. In round three, you draw the great Shingo Kaneda from Japan, who goes on to be one of the most, if not the most dominant male singles tennis player in the world. And this is a tough draw. How did you mentally handle that as you saw that pop up on the display that you were going to have to play him in the third round?
Shingo who? I don't know who you're talking about. No. Uh, yeah, I mean, it happened to me in Athens as well. You know, I make it through a couple rounds and I end up playing the one player in the world. And in '04, it was David Hall. And then it happened again in '08. I'm like, this can't be happening again, where I'm running into the one guy that I'm having a problem with is Shingo. All-round player, takes things early, fluid mobility, hits all the shots, obviously a smart player on top of it. That's the one guy I didn't want to see at that point. Anybody else, I was more than fine with seeing in that third round, but I happened to draw him again. Obviously didn't go my way. But that's the mentality. I remember leading up to that match, and I'm like, well, I can still do this, right? And you're still trying to do it even during the match. You're still like, well, I can do some things here. I can try to do some things that might work. So there's always, as a competitor, there's always that grand hope of I can do this today. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Which brings me to one of the components of tennis that sometimes we don't see in other sports. It's such a mental game. You in accordance with the physicality and being fit and knowing how to play the game. Boy, the game can get into your head.
Correct. I remember being young specifically, and I remember saying this 90-10 rule of 90% mental, 10% physical. That's not true. There's no way, because I'm just going to out hit everybody and I'm going to win. I don't have to think. Obviously, as you get older and you get better and you move along your pathway, that you completely see that that's true. The 90% mental rule is completely in effect, because we still have players today that hit a great ball, but they can't win a match. It's about thinking about your next shot, about thinking your next play, about the consequences of what's going down that line during even 1 point, one match, et cetera, et cetera. And the mental side of it is obviously a huge part of it, like most sports.
So, as a coach, then, how do you handle a player who gets too deep into their head and they just overthink everything? So, is there a process that you take them through, or you took yourself through in order to cope with a situation like that? Your serve gets broken, and you've lost the first set, 1-6, and you can still beat this person. Where do you have to go in your head, and what do you have to do to regroup?
Yeah, we've definitely had that flip the opposite way, where people are overthinking, including myself. What I tell players today is, let's get back to what you do well and what the other person does not do well, and let's see if we can find a mismatch somewhere there. We want them to think, but we don't want them to overthink. There's a fine line there, and the best you can do is find their strengths and let's work from there. Because with their strengths, they don't have to think about. It's much like if you're hitting a ball to my backhand, I don't have to think about it anymore. I just do it, I hit it, and I'm good. And most of these players are the same way. They have their strengths, and we just say, you get to this shot, we'll sacrifice a few points to get you back confident in what you're doing, and then we'll go to step 2 after that.
Hey, John, the four majors, as we well know, Wimbledon, French, Australian, US. Did you get an opportunity to play all of them?
Wimbledon was not a thing when I was playing yet for wheelchair. I did play at the US Open a few times. I did play in Australia. The French was not there when I was high enough to be, because our draws were really low when I was playing. They were top 7 plus a wild card. So there was no way that the French were going to give an American the number 8 player spot that was a wild card.
Of course.
So never got a chance to play the other two, the French and Wimbledon, as a player. I've been there as a coach, of course. But now I see how fortunate they are today to have this. And you know what? The next generation will say the same thing. Oh, how fortunate am I compared to the last generation? It just keeps snowballing. So
Right, right. No, I see ultimate hope for tennis in terms of growth in many ways because of that integration with, and acceptance. I mean, it's a genuine acceptance into the able-bodied world of tennis. And that's huge, isn't it?
it's a huge advantage that our sport has. Well, one, it's integratable with anybody. I can go out there and play with anybody in the world if I really want, able-bodied or in a wheelchair. It doesn't really matter. Para-standing, you name it. Any group that wants to play, I can play against. The other sports don't have that. And that's no fault of their own. It's just the physics of the sport that I can't go out and play sled hockey against my kids that play stand-up hockey. I can't go do that. It's not realistic. Basketball is the same way. Tennis, huge advantage there. And that huge advantage leads to integration at the highest level with the Grand Slams and other tournaments that we can also be a part of now, because in the end, it's just tennis. It's like when people come out to watch us play at the US Open, they are amazed by what we're doing with our chairs. And within about 3 games, they're like, well, now I'm just watching tennis. I'm not even thinking about what they're doing with their chairs or their strokes or anything like that. They're just watching tennis at that point. And that's the best thing for us.
As you guys sit down and have your meetings and trying to deduce how you can make the U.S. team better, what kinds of things are perhaps on the horizon that maybe we don't know about that are going to boost us up onto the podium?
I mean, the first step was the move to Orlando with the National Training Center. That was huge for us. Second, for the wheelchair side of things, is just having enough staff and people to take care of those players that want to live in Orlando full time now. There's always going to be those players that don't have anything to do with the USTA and they do their own thing, and maybe they'll get some input from us or, analytics, things like that. And they'll do their own thing with their private coach. But to have, for wheelchair tennis, who doesn't make as much money as able-bodied tennis, obviously, to have that opportunity to have that in their pathway as a young player is huge. So with Rob Cross coming on now as a full-time head coach, Jason's still there. He's still available as coach. Shingo's still there, helping out a little bit. Dana Mathewson is still in town, helping out as much as possible. We have a group of people that can now push our players to like, this is what you do. This is your job. This is your daily pathway to make it to the top, the highest level that you possibly can, which we did not have before. We relied on ourselves to do it all on our own. We didn't have those resources. Now with those resources, it's a huge advantage for this upcoming generation of players.
Do you have any preference of who you're coaching, men, women, quads, down the line?
I'm used to doing it all, so it doesn't bother me one way or another. I find enjoyment in playing with the absolute best player that I have. If I'm coaching the best player ever and they have all the tools in the toolbox, awesome. I love that I can tell them anything on the court and they can accomplish that because they have that tool. But I also don't mind playing with and coaching some younger players while I'm hitting with them and saying like, well, you're not quite there in your pathway. You don't have all these tools, but let's figure out a way to do this on how you need to get creative if they do not have the tool in the toolbox. I enjoy that as much as I do playing with and hitting with and coaching a top player.
Well, John, I feel pretty confident that the USTA is healthy with guys like you behind it. You've done a great job, both as a player. I mean, 11th in the world, first in the United States, a fabulous accomplishment, and then rising up and taking over in the coaching world and bringing that experience really helps bridge a gap. And I want to thank you for your insights today. It's great to hear from you, and I look forward to following you out on the court.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it. Anytime. I'm here for you.